all subclasses should start at level 1 instead of level 3, where they're trying to do in the most recent ONE D&D playtest.
The immediate thing that Cleric players are going to see is you no longer choose, in this version of the class, your subclass at first level. Instead, subclass is at third level.
But here I'm going to show you why that's a terrible idea. I'll be going over a couple different points with my main point at the end, but I want you to picture with me for a second all of your group gathering at your table ready to start a new game, and you ask them what level they want to play at. What level do they usually want to pick? Level 3. But why do they want to pick that? Because most of the time, that's when all of their abilities that they want to play in their class fantasy comes online. They know that if they start at level 1, it's going to be hard, and 2, they're not going to play with the actual subclass that they want to play at until much later. But Jeremy Crawford, in the most recent interview, says this.
We, for a number of years now, have felt that a far better approach is to let you play the class itself for a couple of levels before you make this momentous decision. We're asking you to make this momentous decision before you even played the class,
Right.
before you even see what it's like to be just a vanilla member of the class. When we ask you to choose a subclass at first level, we are suddenly asking you, who may never have played D&D before, to look at every subclass option for that class before you've even played the class.
That's yeah.
And make the most important decision for your class
For
that
your
you will
future.
make.
Right away.
But most of the time, choice is determined before the game even starts. It is a very rare occurrence, at least for me, that someone doesn't know that they want to play a Swarmkeeper Ranger before they pick the Ranger at the start of their game. It also doesn't make sense for a lot of different subclasses starting at third level already, with a Beastmaster Ranger all about having a Beast Companion, not having a Beast Companion for 3 full levels before they do, or a Shadow Sorcerer or Shadow Monk that don't even get to play with Shadow Magic until the 3rd level, where that's the entirety of their class idea and class fantasy. And don't even get me started on the whole Sorcerer class, where it's supposed to be innate into your bloodline, something that you are born with, but yet the thing that you're born with you don't get until 3rd level. But I get that they want to do this for newcomers, because it's supposed to be easier for people to understand the game and not have to choose a subclass until level 3. Jeremy Crawford says this.
Classes that have a subclass choice at first level have 2 big issues with them. They are a blocker for brand new players. So
yeah, it's not good onboarding.
Exactly. So if you have never played D&D before, you pick at first level, you might have a minor choice to make in a particular class, but otherwise you can get playing.
So again, it's supposed to be easier. You're supposed to have time to be able to think about what you want to become. But if that's the case, why not 5th level? Why not 7th? If it's complication that we want to get rid of, then we honestly need to just relook at all of the spellcasters. Because if I'm going to have a newbie come to my table, I will probably point them over to our melees, like the fighter. So if you think a subclass really is that complicated, I just don't recommend it to my players. And all you really have to do is point them to the easier ones in the game. And it really isn't easier if you really think about it, because at level 1, when they get into the game, it is actually very, very dangerous for your characters to play at that level because of the balance of the CR system and the monsters within. Everyone knows that you are most likely to die at level 1. So here I'm saying, if we have the subclass levels start at level 1, maybe they'll have the boost to be able to play at level 1 the way that they like to. So they're not constantly in fear of dying because they're not quite at the power level they want to be at yet. And yes, I get that that's part of a fantasy that you can play, the scariness of playing at level 1 and having death around every corner. But in most cases, again, at the tables that I've been at, a lot of people just want to skip over that. They don't want to play that. They always want to start at level 3 or higher. And when they do want to start at that higher level, it actually cuts out a ton of monsters of the lower CRs that you as a DM could use in your games. There are many monsters that I think would be fun to use as a boss monster at those low levels, but if I'm going to be able to make it effective at the level that they're at level 3, I would have to throw like 5 of them at them. Or they're just too weak and I would have to throw 10, and at that point it really isn't worth it. But going back to playing a class from level 1 to level 3 and having that base class fantasy before you get to choose what you want that to turn into in your subclass. If you played a sorcerer one game and then want to play a different kind of sorcerer the next game, a different subclass, you have to go through 3 full levels of the exact same play style that you did in the previous game. And again, I can't see this good longevity wise because again, a lot of people will start these classes, play those same first 3 levels, get really bored at them, and then always ask their DM to start again at level 3.
The trend for the whole playtest is going to be subclasses at 3rd level.
One thing that I do immediately have to say about this is, unfortunately, it takes away a lot of the uniqueness of our base classes. Some of the fantasy of playing a sorcerer is getting those powers at low levels, as well as a cleric that you're getting a divine magic from a divine being. To me, it doesn't make sense to have a death cleric only have life spells before I actually get into the death subclass and then actually get power from the deity that I thought that I was getting power at from the beginning. So another reason that I might think that they are doing it this way, where the class scaffolding or all of the levels that you get subclass features from that are the same across the board, across all classes, is that they might make one subclass that fits many different classes. And you might have a death cleric or a death bard and a death sorcerer that all use the same one. But if we remember back at the Strixhaven Unearthed Arcana where they tried to do this, everyone hated the idea. So I don't know if Wizards of the Coast is trying to do this to maybe make us more used to it or create a platform where maybe it will be more accepted. But again, we could do that even if our subclasses are at level 1. It doesn't need to be at level 3. The whole point is just to make it that every class has their subclass features at the same level. Then Jeremy Crawford and Todd Kenrick do talk about how this might affect multiclassing going forward.
We have found repeatedly that the classes that have a subclass choice at first level are the ones that end up in most of the multi-class combos that people often end up gritting their teeth about.
Yeah.
In particular groups.
I see one more 2-level dip into Hexblade.
People are still going to do 1 or 2 level dips into classes. That's fine.
Right.
I mean, that's part of how multi-classing works. But we also want there to be more of a commitment to a class before you choose subclass.
Right.
And that's why subclasses are moving to 3rd level.
Perfect.
So the idea of people multiclassing less to me is a little bit sad. There is a reason that we have multiclassing because across the board, across all subclasses, we do have a lot of different archetypes covered, which is amazing. If you want to play a certain fantasy in your head, you have options to play with. However, it will not fit every class fantasy or fantasy, every idea that we have when it comes to fantasy in our character concepts. Multiclassing allowed us to bridge the gaps between 2 concepts to make something unique. So for example, I had a blood hunter that specialized in their fire magic. So I wanted to obviously multiclass into a sorcerer where I used an Unearthed Arcana, a Phoenix sorcerer, so one with fire, and I got the abilities at 1st level. If I really wanted to accomplish the character that I wanted to now with the 3rd level playtest in the ONE D&D, then I would have to wait 3 levels before I got to the actual stuff that I needed to accomplish my character concept. So in essence, the opportunity cost would just not be worth it. It's almost like taking college classes and having to take a bunch of prerequisites before you actually take the classes that you want. And I totally get that multiclassing is most often used for power gaming or metagaming or whatever. And that's fine, right? That's a play style that you can play as whenever you want to. But multiclassing is also for flavor, and I don't want us to forget that. But there are a lot of things that I do like about the new UA Cleric. I liked a lot of things about this UA, so don't get me wrong, ONE D&D in all, I'm excited for. I loved at the beginning of the Cleric where you get to choose between Scholar or Protector and Thaumaturge, being able to choose where your Cleric specializes. I love that you got an extra channel divinity, and I love that you could empower both your spells and your melee weapons at higher levels. And I also love that we get a lot of features earlier on. But I have to notice some things missing when it comes to our 3rd level subclass is that our 1st level divine spells are missing. So with the life domain cleric subclass that's included in the UA, we saw that both the bless and cure wounds were missing from the base subclass in their domain spells. So I have to assume that going forward in all of these subclasses for the cleric, we won't get the 1st level spells in the domain spells, which in a lot of cases are the most plethrable and the most flavorful when it comes to our spells that we use in in those classes. That means no animal friendship or speak with animals for the nature cleric, no charm person or disguise self for the trickery domain cleric, no detect magic or magic missile from the arcana domain cleric, and the list goes on and on. So I know that this video kind of comes across as complaining, and I'm sorry. I don't make a lot of these videos like this very often, if at all, but I just had to have all of my thoughts kind of compiled into one so that you can take it or leave it. I could be completely wrong, I could completely off about the intentions of Wizards of the Coast or how I look at the game as general, because all of you may play a lot differently. So if anything, I just hope to create a discourse, help me prove myself wrong, or convince me that all of this stuff that I'm talking about is actually good for the game and not what I make it out to be. I'll be playtesting myself where I can and hope you will do the same, as well as going over all of these things in my weekly live streams. But in the meantime, go out there and spread the good word of D&D and make the world a better place, both on and off the table. See you in the next one.